Hello. Today I'm feeling a little piratey, just because I found this nice piratey scarf in the dressing up box. So, anyway, it's the turn of the older children today, and I have decided to read another David Walliams book that is going to one of you, and it's called Billionaire Boy. So I'm going to read one chapter of Billionaire Boy, and then I will be posting it off with a little something special and a great big hug and a kiss from me. Right. So David Walliams books are very funny, and they've got some nice illustrations too. So here we go. Chapter 1. Meet Joe Spud. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have £1 million? Or 1 billion? How about 1 trillion? Or even 1 gazillion? Meet Joe Spud. Joe didn't have to imagine what it would be like to have loads and loads and loads of money. He was only 12, but he was ridiculously, preposterously rich. I can see there's going to be some long words in this that are a bit tongue twister-ish. Joe had everything he could ever want. 100-inch plasma widescreen flat high-definition TV in every room in the house, 500 pairs of Nike trainers, a Grand Prix race track in the back garden, a robot dog from Japan, a golf buggy with the number plate Spud 2 to drive around the grounds of his house, a water slide which went from his bedroom to an indoor Olympic-sized swimming pool. Wow. Every computer game in the world, 3D IMAX cinema in the basement, a crocodile, 24-hour personal masseurs, underground 10-lane bowling alley, snooker table, popcorn dispenser, skateboard, another crocodile, £100,000 a week, pocket money, a roller coaster in the back garden, a professional recording studio in the attic, personalised football coaching from the England team, a real-life shark in a tank. Wow. In short, Joe was one horribly spoilt kid. Let's see if I can find Joe. Here's a picture of Joe. There he is at the bottom. And there's his racetrack, whizzing round in his car. In short, Joe was a horribly spoilt kid. He went to a ridiculously posh school. He flew on private planes whenever he went on holiday. Once, he had even had Disney World closed for the day just so he didn't have to queue for any rides. Here's Joe speeding round his own private racetrack in his own Formula One racing car. Some very rich children have miniature versions of cars specially built for them. Joe wasn't one of those children. Joe needed his Formula One car made a bit bigger. He was quite fat, you see. Well, you would be, wouldn't you, if you could buy all the chocolate in the world. You will have noticed that Joe is on his own in that picture. To tell the truth, speeding around a racetrack isn't that much fun when you're on your own, even if you do have £1 squillion. You really need someone to race against. The problem was, Joe didn't have any friends, not one. Now, driving a Formula One car and unwrapping a king-size Mars bar are two things you shouldn't try to do at the same time. But it had been a few moments since Joe had last eaten, and he was hungry. As he entered the chicane, he tore open the wrapper with his teeth and took a bite of the delicious chocolate-coated nougat and caramel. Unfortunately, Joe had only one hand on the steering wheel. As the wheels of the car hit the verge, he lost control. The multi-million-pound Formula One car careered off the track, spun around and hit a tree. Screech! The tree was unharmed, but the car was a write-off. Joe squeezed himself out of the cockpit. Luckily, Joe wasn't hurt, but he was a little dazed, and he tottered back to the house. "Dad, I crashed the car," said Joe as he entered the palatial living room. Mr. Spud was short and fat just like his son, hairier in a lot of places too, apart from his head, which was bald and shiny. Joe's dad was sitting on a 100-seater crocodile skin sofa and didn't look up from reading that copy of the day's Sun. Oh dear. Don't worry, Joe, he said. I'll buy you another one. Joe slumped down on the sofa next to his dad. Oh, happy birthday, by the way, Joe, Mr. Spud said, and handed an envelope to his son without taking his eyes off the magazine he was leafing through. Joe opened the envelope eagerly. How much money was he going to receive this year? The card, which read Happy 12th Birthday, Son, was quickly discarded in favour of the cheque inside. Joe could barely disguise his disappointment. £1,000,000, he scoffed. Is that all? What's the matter, son? Mr. Spud put down his newspaper for a moment. You gave me £1,000,000 last year, moaned Joe. When I turned 11, surely I should get more now I'm 12. Mr. Spud reached into a pocket of his shiny grey designer suit and pulled out his chequebook. His suit was horrible and horribly expensive. I'm so sorry, son, he said. Let's make it 2,000,000. Now, it's important that you realise that Mr. Spud had not always been this rich. Not so long ago, the Spud family had lived a very humble life. From the age of 16, Mr. Spud worked in a vast loo roll factory on the outskirts of town. Mr. Spud's job at the factory was so boring. He had to roll the paper around the cardboard inner tube. Roll after roll, day after day, year after year, decade after decade. There he is, rolling the toilet rolls. This he did over and over again until nearly all his hope had gone. He would stand all day by the conveyor belt with hundreds of other bored workers, repeating the same mind-numbing task. Every time the paper was rolled into one cardboard tube, the whole thing started again. And every loo roll was the same. Because the family was so poor, Mr. Spud used to make birthday and Christmas presents for his son from the loo roll inner tubes. Mr. Spud never had enough money to buy Joe all the latest toys, but he would make something like a loo roll racing car or a loo roll fort complete with dozens of loo roll soldiers. Most of them got broken and ended up in the bin. Joe did manage to save a sad-looking little loo-rolled space rocket, though he wasn't sure why. The only good thing about working in the factory was that Mr. Spud had lots of time to daydream. One day he had a daydream that was to revolutionise bottom wiping forever. Why not invent a loo roll that is moist on one side and dry on the other, he thought, as he rolled paper around his thousandth roll of the day. Blah, blah, blah. Mr. Spud kept his idea top secret and toiled for hours, locked in the bathroom of their little council flat, getting his new double-sided loo roll exactly right. When Mr. Spud finally launched Bumfresh, it was an instant phenomenon. Mr. Spud sold 1 billion rolls around the world every day, and every time a roll was sold, he made 10p. It all added up to an awful lot of money, as this simple maths equation shows. 10p times 1,000 million. 100,000 million equals lots and lots of wonga. Joe Spud was only 8 at the time Bumfresh was launched, and his wife was turned upside down in a heartbeat. Oh, his life, not his wife. And his life was turned upside down in a heartbeat. First, Joe's mum and dad split up. It turned out that for many years, Joe's mum, Carol, had been having a torrid affair with Joe's Cub Scout leader, Alan. She took £10 billion divorce settlement. Alan swapped his canoe for a gigantic yacht. Last anyone heard, Carol and Alan were sailing off the coast of Dubai, pouring vintage champagne on their crunchy nut cornflakes every morning. Joe's dad seemed to get over the split quickly and began to go on dates with all sorts of wildly unsuitable ladies. Soon, father and son moved out of their poky council flat and into an enormous stately home. Mr. Spud named it Bumfresh Towers, a bit like Trump Towers. The house was so large it was visible from outer space. It took 5 minutes just to motor up the drive. Hundreds of newly planted, hopeful little trees lined the mile-long gravel track. The house had 7 kitchens, 12 sitting rooms, 47 bedrooms and 89 bathrooms. Even the bathrooms had ensuite bathrooms, and some of those ensuite bathrooms had ensuite bathrooms. Despite living there for a few years, Joe had probably only ever explored around a quarter of the main house. In the endless grounds were tennis courts, a boating lake, a helipad, and even a 100-metre ski slope, complete with mountains of fake snow. All the taps, door handles, and even toilet seats were solid gold. The carpets were made from mink fur. He and his dad drank orange squash from priceless, antique medieval goblets, and for a while they had a butler called Otis, who was also an orangutan. But he had to be given the sack. "Can I have a proper present as well, Dad?" said Joe, as he put the cheque in his trouser pocket. "I mean, I've got loads of money already." "Tell me what you want, son, and I'll get one of my assistants to buy it," said Mr. Spud. "Some solid gold sunglasses? I've got a pair. You can't see out of them, but they're very expensive." Joe yawned. "Your own speedboat?" ventured Mr. Spud. Joe rolled his eyes. "I've got 2 of those, remember." "Sorry, son. How about £250,000 worth of W.H. Smith vouchers?" "Boring, boring, boring." Joe stamped his feet in frustration. Here was a boy with high-class problems. Mr. Spud looked forlorn. He wasn't sure there was anything left in the world that he could buy for his only child. "Then what, son?" Joe suddenly had a thought. He pictured himself going round the racetrack all on his own, racing against himself. "Well, there is something I really want," he said tentatively. "Name it, son," said Mr. Spud. "A friend." There we are. That was the first chapter. The second chapter is called Bum Boy, the bog roll kid. Ooh, fancy being called that. Doesn't matter how rich you are, does it? Anyway, there's the second chapter, and we will stop there, and I will be putting this in the post to some lucky child. Okay, have a nice day today, and we will play out again. Nearly forgot, didn't I? Let's do it the other way around this time. Bye-bye.